We're going to move on to Jenna Niven. She's the creative director at RGA, and she's got a very packed question. Have we unlocked limitless creativity? Have we? To answer that question, she's going to share some real examples of how RGA is using AI segmented approach to create innovative solutions for their clients. So please give a warm round of applause for Jenna.
Hello, everyone. I've actually got a quick question for everyone in the audience. Are there any visual designers or experienced designers in the audience? Yay! Okay, cool. This is going to be more for you guys because I come from a visual background. So this is a really interesting question. Have we unlocked limitless creativity? So I'm going to try and answer that today. But first, Jeff did a really good job of giving everyone a little bit of background about him, so we had context of the Snapchat presentation. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm just going to enlist the help of someone to do it for me. Alexa, tell me about Jenna.
Alrighty. As a creative director focusing on emerging technology, Jenna has worked with dozens of Fortune 500 clients to deliver innovative and creative solutions that connect and engage with their various audiences. Over the past 10 years, she has worked to bridge the gap between data science, engineering, and creatives. More recently, whilst at RGA, she has focused on integrating artificial intelligence into the entire creative process from research to ideation to product and service design, creating an AI design framework along the way. And here is a fun fact. She gets really mean when she is hungry. Whoops-a-daisy.
It's true.
I wasn't supposed to tell you that.
So, I mean, it's lucky I'm in the 2:30 spot, so I've had something to eat. But I just wanted to go back, so thanks for that. My friend over there, if I say her name, she'll start talking again. Have we unlocked limitless creativity? I think to answer this question, we really have to go back in time. So, throughout history, we've all always tried to unlock, more than what we can give. So we've always tried to push the capabilities, our own capabilities. So back in the 15th century, we tried to overcome our human muscle power limitations by enlisting animals to help us. And then obviously in the 18th century, we tried to overcome muscle and animal power by inventing the steam engine. And that essentially steamrolled the Industrial Revolution, which was probably the biggest thing to happen to human in history to date. And nowadays, we're sending satellites into space to overcome the limitations of our sight. So there's really no surprise that we're now using artificial intelligence to overcome the limitations of our mind. And more specifically, machines, AI, enabling us to do more. So enter the augmented age, the second machine age, the age of intelligence, whatever you want to call it. We're using artificial intelligence to do some really, really cool things, like understand massive amounts of information that you couldn't have humanly possibly done before, accelerate how fast we make decisions and how good those decisions are, and communicate at the speed of thought, or get someone else to do it for you, and design products and services that are essentially just more useful to the end user. So we obviously can't have this conversation about AI without addressing the two sides of the camp. So we've got on one side, which we've heard is it's the best thing since the Industrial Revolution, hooray, and on the other side, it's the destruction of the human race. But do you know what? It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter because artificial intelligence is here to stay. And so I challenge all the designers out there to reposition the way they think of artificial intelligence as just another tool in their design toolbox. So just like you went from pencil and paper to the computer, to InDesign, to Photoshop, to Sketch, think of artificial intelligence as just another tool in your toolbox to push the limitations of creativity. So what do I mean? What does this look like in the real world? So I'm going to show you a couple of examples to really articulate what I'm trying to say here about limitless creativity. So firstly, we're going to talk about Rose, the hotel chatbot. This is a bit of an RGA plug. So RGA Chicago built this bot for the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas Hotel. And I'm going to play the video because it does a better job of explaining it than I would. I've actually just been recently thinking that I should enlist Rose to manage my dating profiles so I can get a few more dates. But basically, you can ask Rose anything, and she specializes in 9 domains. So you can ask her about restaurants and bars and entertainment and wellness. So you think about this from a designer's perspective. How as us as designers, how do how do we manage the amount of responses that we have to design for? How do we accommodate every single permutation or every single utterance that will come out of someone's mouth to Rose? So an example here is what you could do is you could, for example, you're at Las Vegas, you want to know what restaurants are available. You could sit down as a copywriter and think about every single utterance that possibly someone could say regarding food. So there could be a huge amount. So these are just a few. I would like to know the restaurants, food, what can I eat, hungry. You could even say someone would put an emoji there. And then you could write user flows for every single one of these options. Or we can enlist the help of artificial intelligence and more specifically natural language processing. So that's what we're doing here. So every time someone inputs something into Rose, we use natural language processing to understand the intent. So in this case, all of these responses would fall under the intent restaurants. And then we feed them through into a finite set of user flows. So if we think about that, you've essentially got an infinite amount of inputs that we can respond to because we can understand the intent. There's no limitation there in terms of how much we can copyright, how many story flows we can copyright, just because of human capabilities. So it's pretty cool. The next example that I'm going to talk about, this is an RGA internal project, and it was really born out of the idea or business problem within RGA. The fact that we have clients across multiple industries, we have to stay on top of obviously a huge group of industries, and nowadays it's not really as simple as one industry is living in a silo in terms of trends and disruptions. We've got companies like Google, and 5 years ago you wouldn't have thought that they would be disrupting the automotive industry. So we wanted a tool where we could take two seemingly really disparate topics or industries and find out what's going on at the intersection. So that's where Spark was born. And Spark was actually built internally at RGA in 6 weeks. So keep that in mind when I show you a prototype. So I'm going to skip past this one and show you the next, just for the sake of time. So the use case is I'm browsing, I've gone on Fast Company on my tablet, and I found this article, and it's pretty interesting. So basically, it's about this one, specifically is Jack Dorsey, Eric Schmidt have invested in this startup called Peak, and it's a travel startup. So this is pretty interesting. So what I want to do is find out, is something like this going to impact my client? So I go up there in the share tray, hit the Spark app, and then Spark actually now reads the article. So we can see here, it's doing it in real time, it's understanding what the article is about, and filtering out all of these topics, and then choosing the highest one. So now we know it's about travel. So I want to go and pick my client's industry, which just so happens to be a workplace environment, and then generate an insight based on those two very seemingly disparate topics. So we hit Build Insight, and there we have an article that's brought up. And if you have a look at the title of that article, which is down in the bottom right-hand corner, in this particular case, when we've got travel and vacations and workplace environment, we've got this article that says, the digital nomad life, combining work and travel. So it's pretty cool. And I think every time I do this, my mind is blown by what's come up as the article in the recommendation. It's amazing. So I'm going to break it down into a few parts and show you how we've built this. So firstly, you've got the Spark app, which actually reads the article. So this is not groundbreaking. So what we're doing is pulling out all of the topics. But you can think about, if we didn't have AI, how would we possibly do this? Well, this is the amount of articles on the internet. So you could go out and you could read all of these articles, write down all the topics, but it's never going to happen. Firstly, it probably isn't humanly possible. You'd probably die before you get there. And it's a waste of your time. So we enlist artificial intelligence to do that for us. So we use natural language processing and topic extraction to pull out the topics of this article. So you can see down there, there's a few of them, and then we end up with the highest ranking down the bottom there with travel and vacation. And then we move on to picking the secondary topic. So in this case, I've taken workplace environment. Again, you could go back to all of those articles on the internet and then find something that you see might be related to workplace environment and surface that up. Keeping in mind, there could be articles out there that may be about a topic that we humanly understand to be about that topic, but don't explicitly say it. So this, we all know, is about space, but doesn't say space. So you've got to keep that in mind as well. So how do we do that? Well, this is when it gets really interesting. So what we've done is we've trained a model on all of the Reddit data. So AI has ingested all of this Reddit threads and conversations, and it inherently learns the relationship between all of these words, which is really, really cool, right? Because then I can say, okay, hey AI, hey Spark, when I'm talking about travel and vacations, what else could I possibly be talking about? And it just doesn't come back with similar words, it comes back with words that we, as human beings, talk about in context of each other. So in this case, it's got backpacking, transportation, vacation, flights, staycation, birthdays, all the topics that we would probably classify around travel and vacations, but not explicitly stated. And then the same with workplace environment. Hey Spark, what else would I be talking about when I talk about workplace environment? We've got fellow employees, office culture, employment, service job, work hours. So we've got a whole list of these topics that are in and around workplace environment and in and around travel and vacations, and then we go and search. And basically we search and search and search until we find a match. And in this case, again, the digital nomad life combining work and travel. Amazing. And then the final piece of the puzzle, and this is a part where I'm personally really interested in, is around the natural language generation. So we're a far way off actually bringing natural language generation into a commercial space. So what we did here, for the sake of time, we did text summarization. And this was our first pass, and I think it's actually pretty good. Sometimes it gets there, sometimes it doesn't. So if we have a look, we've got the first sentence there, which is, the company is one of dozens of new work tourism programs that aim to help workers known as the digital nomads navigate living and working in far-off places. So it kind of makes sense, but you don't really know who the company is, and it really falls over at the end there when it says, please verify you're not a robot by clicking the box. So it doesn't quite get there, but enough for an internal tool for us to just scan these articles. I don't even have to go and read that article, which is about an 8-minute read. I can read this paragraph, this summarization, and move on. So if we think about that for a second, this is a product that literally could not have existed without artificial intelligence. It's something that allows us to consume so much information, so much content that we couldn't have done it before, but we can now. So that's really, really cool. And then the final example that I'm going to talk about is one called the Next Rembrandt. And this was done by ING and Microsoft. And when you look at this painting, by all means, it looks like your pretty standard Rembrandt. You know, it's painted on a black canvas, the portrait's facing the right way, the lighting's correct. You look at the texture of the painting, the brushwork. You know, critics have a look at it and say, you know, it looks like a Rembrandt. It's probably just one I haven't seen before. But newsflash, this is actually painted by an AI. Pretty crazy, right? So you've got a painting that an art critic walked past and said, you know what, I probably just haven't seen it before, but it looks like a Rembrandt. But it was painted by an AI. So I'm going to explain how this works. So similar to the Reddit example where we fed the AI a whole bunch of Reddit threads, what they did was they fed their AI every single Rembrandt picture that they could get their hands on. Not just in 2D, but they did it in 3D as well. So they got the height mapping of all of these images. And then they said to the AI, okay, based on what you know about what you've learned about Rembrandt paintings, tell me what we would paint if we were going to paint a Rembrandt painting from scratch. And the AI came back and said, you know what, if you're going to do a painting, a Rembrandt painting, this is what you probably should do. A portrait, Caucasian, male, facial hair, 30 to 40 years old, dark clothing, a little collar, wearing a hat, facing to the right. But that's not good enough, right? Because you can't just say that and then cut and paste bits and pieces from other paintings and expect that to pass an art critic. It's not going to work. So we have to go a level deeper and do the same process across every single feature on the portrait. So then we do the same thing across the eyes. We have a look at all the eyes in every single Rembrandt painting, and then the AI learns how to produce a net new eye from what it's learned. So this isn't just replicating a new eye, this is generating a net new eye. And you do that across all of the different features. You do that across the nose, the mouth, the ears, and then even just the way, the composition of the painting. And essentially, it has generated a new person, a new portrait, which is amazing. And then take it a step further, right? Because a painting's not just a 2D object. It's a 3D object. And I'm one of those really annoying people that at art galleries got really, really close to the paintings and stand in front of everyone and have a look at the brushstrokes, because that's where you kind of see the artist, you feel the story. So they took the height maps and did the same thing. So they took all of these 3D height maps and then said to the AI, if you were going to paint this painting, how would you do it? And what they did was then they took that information and then 3D printed it. So they did layers and layers and layers of paint out of a 3D printer and produced this painting. Amazing. Because you can imagine, this is just one example, right? The AI probably could have done thousands and thousands and thousands of more. And just recently, I saw an article where they're doing the same thing but with images, with photography. So we're creating new people that don't exist. It's amazing. And you think, oh God, fake news. But in this case, they're actually using the technology in reverse to find fake paintings. So, human beings are good. So have we unlocked limitless creativity? I mean, it's still a good question to ask, and I hope that I've convinced you that it's a yes, because I've shown you how we can use natural language processing to essentially understand and answer limitless amounts of questions. We can use the same technology plus concept extraction to synthesize limitless amounts of content. And then the mic drop moment, right? Using facial recognition to completely generate net new images. Crazy. And so I think that it's probably never been a more exciting time to be a designer. And I feel like limitless creativity is here. The only limit is really our understanding of the technology and our understanding of the technology and what we can do with it. So once we overcome that, I think all bets are off. Thank you. So I've got a bit of time, so I can answer any questions, if anyone has any questions about the work or... Oh, yeah.
So as you see designers going, or creators going from having this limitless creativity, how does the role of the designer, the role of the creator change in this environment now, where previously, as you showed at Rembrandt, right, he would have to paint, he would have to look at someone's eye, make it, but now you can have this thing generated, and now what's his role? What would Rembrandt do now?
I think that's a great question, and in my mind, if I equate the Rembrandt to maybe something a bit more practical like a website. So you've got a brand who needs a new website, so we can essentially, thinking in the future, we set a few parameters, and then we go off and leave the AI to generate this website on its own. There needs to be that person who essentially sets those parameters to begin with, right? So we have a purpose for the website, we have objectives, we have kind of what we want it to do, we have a look and feel, and then we go off and leave it. So it's not like it's going to know innately what to do. There's still the role of the creation, the understanding, the objective. So I think there's just a different role for designers. I think that it's, again, now that we can use, and I think the example just goes back to, how we use Photoshop or Illustrator, and how, back in the day you used to have to, if you wanted to deep etch an image, you'd have to physically go out and do that, but now you've got tools that figure out the curves and understand to do it for you. So it's a similar sort of thing, we just need to figure out how we're going to work with it.
So do you think, because we've had discussions about how AI could take jobs, could not take jobs, and maybe it's just going to take the automated stuff, and we're still going to have somebody to sort of dictate to the AI what to do and how to do it. But do you think it's ever going to reach a point where it thinks creatively, and then it starts to kind of take on the role of a creative person? I mean, maybe we're not there yet, but do you see that happening?
Do you know what? I am probably one of the very few that think, like, innately what human beings define as creativity. I feel like the computer will never get there because it is algorithmic, right? I think that there's always going to be a niche for us to think creatively. I don't think that's ever going to happen on its own. I think that it can help us, it can facilitate us. So the next speaker's got some great examples about how an algorithm produced a million results or X amount of results, and then that inspired the creatives to then to use that and move forward. I don't think it's ever going to be a net, the AI just does it for you. I think there's always going to be a relationship between the human. Because we've got skills that an AI probably never will have. You know, we've got our experience of our life. We've got, you know, emotive experiences. We've just got things that that a computer would never have. Cool. Thank you very much.